Hi, this is Yulia, and you're watching my channel, Rebels and Revolutions. For the next 6 episodes, we will investigate a less well-known revolution of 1954 in Algeria against the colonial domination of France. While this is the most common interpretation of this event, it is a rather dangerous simplification. In fact, the reason I've been utterly fascinated by this topic is its complexity. Both sides committed unspeakable crimes, yet both sides had ample justification for their actions. And when I said both sides, I was already messing this story up. There were, in fact, multiple players in this drama, all with their own agenda and grievances. There is one more, and perhaps the most important reason that I chose to focus on this topic. Some revolutions are an expression of popular discontent. In those cases, the majority of the population, which has been controlled by a minority, attempts to restore its position with widespread popular support. This was not one of those revolutions. The Algerian Revolution had to be prepared, nurtured, and orchestrated, both from the inside and out. To be sure, the native Algerian population had plenty of legitimate grievances against many ill-conceived actions by the French government. But the majority of the sources that I have studied suggest that, by and large, the Algerian population was not actively seeking to overthrow the colonial yoke. In fact, despite the privileges that French residents of Algeria had over the local population, France did build a world-class infrastructure, which allowed a small segment of native Algerian population educational and professional opportunities that were previously unavailable to them. The overwhelming majority of the liberal wing of the revolutionaries, such as Farhat Abbas, were heavily pro-French and were often more at ease speaking French than Arabic. I believe that before World War II, most Algerians did not aspire to gain full independence. They simply wished for all Algerians to become French citizens instead of just French subjects. Then how did this revolution become the Savage War of Peace, as Alistair Horn referred to it in his similarly titled book? Before we answer this question, please allow me to provide some background information. In 1830, using the lamest of excuses, France invaded Algeria, which was under nominal suzerainty of the Turkish military rule. Charles X used the Algerian adventure in a classic wag the dog scenario to distract French people from the growing domestic trouble. Local population actively resisted the occupation led by the legendary Abdul al-Qadar, who for 15 years fought the French, but was eventually defeated as he simply was unable to unite Algerian tribes against the massively more powerful French military machine. The legend of Al-Qadar, as well as his green and red banner, would be used to great effect by the Algerian revolutionaries. In 1834, Algeria officially became a French military colony. In 1848, it was declared by the new constitution to be an integral part of France and not a colony. From that point on, France started investing heavily into Algeria, with the majority of the benefits from this investment accruing to the newly arriving French citizens. Here, I must pause to clarify that it would be an unfortunate mistake to think of the European settlers in Algeria as French. They did speak French, well, most of them, and they carried French civic and cultural traditions. But over time, they became pieds noirs, black feet. The name European settlers in Algeria would become known to posterity. By 1917, only 20% of the European settlers were French, with the rest being comprised of Italians, Spanish, and Maltese, with no allegiance to France whatsoever. Even those who can still wave the tricolour most likely never even visited the mother country. Several sources painted European settlers in Algeria with the same brush they used to depict them in America, where they simply pushed Native Americans off their land. In fact, I found plenty of evidence that the land transfer was rather orderly. The French government inherited state domains from its Turkish predecessors, more than 1 million hectares, which they distributed and sold to the settlers. While there were clearly some punitive land takeovers, the native population was not forcefully displaced, as was the case in many colonial era takeovers. On the political front, there was also some progress. In 1865, Code d'Indigènement was implemented, allowing Muslims to apply for full French citizenship, a measure that few took advantage of since it involved renouncing the right to be governed by Sharia law in personal matters. While it is easy to criticize the insensitivity of French authorities, I think it must be viewed in the context of its era. Note that 1865 was the year of the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery in the US, so let's not judge the French too harshly. We will, however, note the greatest mistake of French authorities. They expected all Algerians to perform the duties of French citizens while refusing to offer the benefit of it all. Algeria was legally classified to be an integral part of France. As such, there was a greater pressure to treat Algerians as French citizens, especially given the sacrifice that native Algerians offered to the metropolitan France in fighting Germans. The confidence of the Algerian population in the moral authority of the French was severely shaken, as Algeria was under the Vichy regime during the war. As Algerian soldiers were fighting side by side with French, British, and American ones, they expected to have a much greater say in the post-war world, thus offering another reason for the revolution. As the soldiers returned to Algeria, they were not going to tolerate the status quo, demanding a much greater autonomy and full citizenship rights. Well, by that point, the French economy was completely destroyed, and the idea of granting citizenship benefits to the Algerian population had very limited support, while Pied Noirs were openly hostile to any changes with respect to the political status of the native Algerian population. We are now ready to investigate the course of events that kicked off this revolution, but it is a good place for us to take a break. But fear not, as my very buff Austrian hero, turned former governor of California once famously said,
"I'll be back."
Next time, we will talk about the start of the revolution. Please like, subscribe to this channel, and most importantly, return to watch the next episode in this fascinating series.